There was something wrong with my office. It wasn't just the shadows that stretched unnaturally, or the way the light flickered when I wasn't looking. It wasn't even the hairs on the back of my neck standing up when I sat alone at my desk. It was the feeling that something or someone was watching me, waiting for me to lose my grip on reality. And then I did. It all started innocently enough. Emily, my daughter, called one evening with a nervous edge in her voice. Dad. Kai says there's sips a ghost in your office. He sips really scared. He says things are moving around, Dad. He doesn't set know what to think. I brushed it off, thinking it was just another one of Kai Sip's wild ideas. A ghost? Seriously? You know I don't Sips buy into that stuff, Em. But her voice held an unshakable fear. No, Dad. He Sip's serious. He won't accept even go near your office anymore. Something in her tone made me pause. I didn't believe in ghosts, not in the traditional sense. But Emily? She wasn't the type to make things up. And Kai, well, Kai was always a little too charming for comfort. I'd never fully trusted him, though I kept it to myself. He was married to my only daughter. I wanted to believe in him, but deep down I knew something didn't sit right with me. I tried to forget about it, but as the days went on, the oddities in my office only grew. Little things at first, a chair out of place. My pens moved around, but then it escalated. My desk, my sanctuary, was disrupted. Papers scattered, files opened. My computer, which I knew I had shut down, turned on by itself, its screen flickering in the dead of night. I started to feel it, the creeping sense of dread. And it wasn't just the office. It felt like the house itself was shifting. The walls seemed to close in around me, shadows stretching longer than they should. The more I tried to ignore it, the worse it got. One night, I sat in my office late, staring at the blinking cursor on my computer. My mind raced, my heart beat faster. I swore I saw something, a figure moving by the door, just a flicker at the edge of my vision. I turned my head. No one. The room was empty, but the air felt heavier, colder. Get it together, Jack, I muttered to myself. But my pulse quickened. I knew something wasn't right. Then came the whispering. I thought it was just my mind playing tricks. But I heard it again. Dad. A voice, soft, almost too faint to hear. I whipped around, my hands shaking. There was no one there. The doubt started to creep in. Was I losing my mind? Was I really hearing things? My rational mind fought to hold on to logic, but the evidence was mounting. Strange occurrences were happening, and I couldn't explain them. And then Emily called again. Dad, Kaisip's really freaked out. He says the ghost is doing things, moving things around, making noise. He's scared, Dad. That was it, the last straw. I couldn't keep ignoring this. Whether it was a ghost or something else, I had to know what was going on. So I did what any man would do when his sanity was on the line. I called Ryan, my old friend from college, a tech wizard, who I trusted with everything when it came to tech. Jack, he said, set up hidden cameras. We'd catch whatever is messing with you. It sounded extreme, but at this point I didn't care. If it was a ghost, I'd be laughing at myself. If it was something or someone else, I needed to know. I had cameras installed everywhere, hidden in plain sight, capturing every inch of the room. I couldn't afford to leave anything to chance. The footage started coming through the next day. My heart raced as I pulled up the first video feed. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Kai. There he was, in my office moving my things. My pens, my files, my chair. It was him. He was pretending to be a ghost, deliberately manipulating everything around me. The whispers, the shadows, the strange occurrences, all of it was him. All of it was a lie. I rewound the footage, watching it again, my heart sinking with each passing second. Key had been in my office playing the part of a ghost, making it seem like I was losing my grip. My mind raced as the pieces started to fall into place. But why? Why would he do this? I'd never fully trusted Cole, but I never imagined this. He was my son-in-law, the man married to my only daughter. I had believed in him, at least to some degree. But this was beyond anything I could have expected. This wasn't just a prank. This wasn't some harmless joke. This was a calculated move. A move to destroy me, my reputation, my business, my life, one lie at a time. I sat back, the weight of the truth crashing down on me. My own flesh and blood had betrayed me in the most twisted way possible, and now I had to figure out why. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I wasn't sure yet what Kai wanted, but I knew one thing for certain: I couldn't let him get away with it. I had to expose him for what he truly was, someone who would destroy everything I'd built for his own gain. And I wasn't going to stop until I did. The footage sat in front of me like a dead weight, pulling me deeper into a pit I couldn't claw my way out of. I stared at the screen, watching Kaidi, my son-in-law, the man I had once trusted, move my things around, laughing like it was all some sick game. His face, once charming and disarming, now felt like a mask, a perfect disguise for the scheming liar he truly was. I tried to shake it off. Tried to tell myself it wasn't real, that maybe I had misunderstood something. But every time I replayed the footage, every time I watched him tamper with my office like it was some twisted joke, the truth became clearer and more painful than ever. This wasn't just a betrayal. This wasn't just some petty prank. Kai was trying to ruin my life. He was setting me up to lose everything I had worked so hard to build. My sanity, my business, my family. He was taking it all, piece by piece, and I couldn't stop him. I hadn't felt this helpless in years. I built my empire from nothing, clawing my way to success, and now the one person I thought I could trust was about to tear it all down. I thought back to the late nights I spent grinding in my office, away from my family, building this legacy. Was it all for nothing? Was this what it was going to come to? My daughter's husband pulling the strings from the shadows, trying to take everything from me. I couldn't let it happen. I wouldn't let it. But as the days passed, I started to question everything. The paranoia started to set in. How long had this been going on? How many times had Kai played me like a fool? The more I thought about it, the more I realized just how deep this went. Emily, my daughter, my only family left, was wrapped up in this mess too. She didn't know. Or maybe she didn't want to know. Maybe Kai had manipulated her too, playing on her trust, using her love for him as a shield. But how could she not see? How could she not feel it too? The tension, the lies, the coldness creeping in between us. She wasn't blind, was she? The thought gnawed at me like a cancer. I had to protect her. I had to stop Key, not just for me, but for her too. But how? How could I possibly expose the man she loved without destroying her too? I locked myself in my office, replaying the footage over and over, trying to piece together the puzzle. Each time I watched it, the anger built. But so did the confusion. Why? What was Kai after? Why go to such lengths to make me doubt my own mind? I couldn't make sense of it. The frustration, the helplessness, it was all consuming. I felt like I was losing control, like I was on the edge of something I couldn't stop. That's when it hit me. My business, my empire, it was all at risk. Kari had been involved in everything, every deal, every property. He knew my finances, my weaknesses, my plans to retire and leave it all behind. If he took that from me, what would I have left? I walked over to the desk, my hands trembling, and pulled out the folder containing my retirement plans. I had been looking forward to this day for so long, my future. A quiet life far from the stress and the pressure of running a business. But now that future seemed like a cruel joke. All my hard work, all the sacrifices I made could be gone in an instant. And it was Kaike who had wormed his way into my life, who was the one threatening it all. I couldn't let him win. Not like this, but I didn't know how to fight back. I had no proof, nothing solid, nothing to show anyone, just the footage. The footage that only I had seen, and who would believe me? Kai was clever. He'd covered his tracks well. There had to be more. I had to find it. But the more I searched, the more I realized he wasn't just trying to ruin me. He was trying to destroy everything I cared about, my business, my reputation, my family. And now he was tearing apart my mind. It was all too much. I needed a plan. I needed to get ahead of him. I needed to expose him before it was too late. I reached for my phone and dialed Ryan. "I need you," I said, my voice tight with frustration. I need you to dig into Kiesp's finances. Find everything. His bank accounts, his dealings. We need to know exactly what Kiesp's been doing. Ryan didn't hesitate. I step on it, Jack. You step will have the answers soon. But as the phone call ended, I felt no relief. The storm inside me raged on. I had a plan now, but it felt like it was too little, too late. And then there was Emily. How would she react when the truth came out? Would she stand by her husband, or would she see him for what he truly was? I closed my eyes, the weight of it all crashing down on me. I was no longer just trying to protect myself. I was trying to save my daughter from a man who had poisoned everything she thought she knew about love. I didn't know how this was going to end. I didn't know if I could save my family, but I knew one thing for sure: Kai was going to pay for what he did. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I didn't know what the next few days would bring, but I would make sure Kai didn't destroy me or my family without a fight. The stakes had never been higher. I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I had to act. The thought of just sitting back, letting Kai carry on with his lies was too much. It was suffocating. I'd built an empire from the ground up, and now this man who I thought of as family was threatening to tear it all down. I paced around my office, feeling the weight of it all. The betrayal was like a heavy fog in my mind. How had it come to this? How had I allowed myself to trust someone who was so clearly manipulating me? It felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me, and I was stumbling, trying to find my footing again. But I couldn't let Kai win. Not like this. He thought he could get away with it. Thought I wouldn't catch on, but he didn't know me. He didn't know what I was capable of when pushed too far. I had to expose him, and I couldn't waste any more time. Every second I spent dithering, questioning myself, was another second Kai could use to bury me. I needed to be sharp, methodical, calculated. The first call I made was to Ryan, my best friend since college. He'd helped me with tech stuff in the past, but this time it was different. I needed more than just a few cameras. I needed eyes on everything. Ryan, I said, my voice steady but filled with urgency, I need you to dig into Kaisep's finances, everything. Bank accounts, investments, transactions. Get me everything. Ryan didn't hesitate. I selt get started tonight. You selt have the full picture soon. I hung up, then looked at my phone, the reality of the situation sinking in. Kai wasn't just messing with me. He was stealing from me, using me. And now he had to pay. I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone I could trust completely. My mother, Ellen, she was the one person who had always been in my corner, even when the world seemed to turn against me. But she didn't know the full extent of what was happening with Keeney. I wasn't sure how to tell her, but I needed her insight. I needed to know what she thought about all this. She knew more about our family history than anyone else. If there was a weakness Kai could exploit, she would know. Mom, I said when she picked up the phone, I need to talk. Of course, Jack, she replied, her voice soft but concerned. I hesitated. I didn't want to scare her, but I had to be honest. It sets Kai. I think he set's been stealing from me. I don't sets have all the details yet, but I seen enough to know he sets behind all the strange things happening in my office. The ghost, the moving things around. It sets all him. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her thoughts racing. Jack, she finally said, her voice low, almost a whisper. I always knew there was something off about him, but I never said anything. I didn't want to upset you, but you need to be careful. You not the first person he tried to manipulate. I could feel a chill settle over me as her words sank in. She was right. Cody had always been too charming, too smooth. I had fallen for it. We all had, but not anymore. I'm not going to take him down, Mom, I said, my voice hardening with resolve. Is Matt going to make sure he can hurt me or anyone else again? She didn't argue. She knew better than anyone that once I made up my mind, there was no stopping me. I spent the next few days meticulously planning my move. I reviewed every detail of Kai's life I could find. His business dealings, his financials, his past. I was looking for any thread I could pull to unravel him. Anything that would expose him for what he truly was. A fraud, a manipulator, a liar. And then I found it. One of my properties, a commercial building Kai had been overseeing, had a series of questionable transactions linked to it. Money was being funneled into companies I'd never heard of, companies that didn't exist or had shady connections. It didn't take much digging to uncover that Kai had been siphoning money from my business accounts into his own personal accounts for months. It was all there, in black and white. The receipts, the bank transfers, the fake invoices. He had been stealing from me for months. He'd been using my trust, my generosity, to line his pockets and set the stage for whatever twisted plan he had in mind. I sat back, my heart pounding. This was it. This was the evidence I needed to take him down. But there was more. I wasn't going to just expose him and walk away. No, I was going to make sure he couldn't escape the consequences. He would lose everything, the trust of his wife, his place in my family, his shot at any future with the wealth he thought was his for the taking. Ryan called later that night, confirming everything. "ISEF got everything, Jack," he said. "It's all here. The transfers, the shady companies, even some fake contracts. Youssef got a solid case. Now it's just about playing it right." I smiled grimly. "We still not done yet. ISEP's going to expose him in a way he still never forget." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I had the tools now. The evidence, the plan, but there was one thing left to do. I had to make sure Emily saw him for what he really was. I had to make sure she knew that the man she loved, the man she had chosen over me, was nothing more than a thief and a liar. I couldn't protect her forever. She had to face the truth, and I was going to make sure she did, whether she liked it or not. The days that followed were a blur of planning, paperwork, and one meticulous move after another. Every decision, every action was calculated. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. Kai had been playing me for months, maybe longer, and now it was time to turn the tables. The evidence was undeniable. Bank transfers, fake contracts, shady deals, all leading back to him. But I couldn't just show Emily a stack of papers and expect her to believe me. No, this had to be done with precision. I needed to expose Kai in a way that would destroy his credibility, his reputation, and everything he thought he was entitled to. I started by freezing access to his business accounts. Key had no idea that I'd been watching him so closely, that I'd been digging into his finances and tracking every suspicious transaction. But now every dollar he thought he was moving into his own pockets was frozen. The accounts were locked, the flow of money cut off. It was a small victory, but it was enough to send him into a frenzy. I could feel the pressure building. Every time I checked my phone, there was another frantic call or text from him, asking about the accounts, trying to smooth things over, playing the role of the worried, innocent man. But I wasn't buying it. He had no idea I was playing him. And the best part, he had no idea what was coming next. I called Ryan again. "We need to make sure Kai feels like he sips getting away with it. We need to keep him on edge." Ryan didn't hesitate. "Leave it to me, Jack. I set a plan to few false leads, make him think he said's outsmarting us." It felt good. Watching Kai squirm, watching him make desperate moves to cover his tracks. It gave me a sense of satisfaction, but I couldn't let it go too far. Not yet. My plan needed time to unfold, and patience was key. I decided to turn the tables further. I planted a few subtle false clues around his office, and in the property he'd been managing. Nothing too obvious, but just enough to make him second-guess himself. Maybe a misplaced document here, a phone number he didn't recognize there. Just enough to make him paranoid, to make him feel like someone was always watching him. The more I set up these small traps, the more I saw Kai begin to unravel. He started to act different. The confident, charming facade was slipping. I watched as he tried to cover his tracks, digging deeper and deeper into his own lies. It was only a matter of time before he cracked. I could feel it, the tension was building, and I was just getting started. Meanwhile, I kept feeding Emily small, carefully timed pieces of information. I didn't want to overwhelm her, but I needed her to start seeing the cracks in Kira's story. She was smart, and I knew she'd start noticing the inconsistencies. Slowly, I began to build a case against him in her mind, one conversation at a time. M. Have you noticed anything strange with Key lately? I asked casually one evening. Anything off? She hesitated. Well, now that you mention it, Hesep's been more distant lately. And Hesep's always talking about the business. Like Hesep's the one running it, not you. I leaned in, my tone serious. You need to be careful, Em. I don't set want to scare you. But Hesettl's been doing more than just that. Izep's seen the signs. Hesettle's been hiding things from you. Emily looked at me, confusion and worry in her eyes. What are you saying, Dad? I set been saying Heset's been taking money from the business. I have proof. I set show you everything, but you have to trust me. Her eyes widened, but she didn't say anything. She just nodded slowly, taking it all in. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I couldn't force her to believe me, but I could make sure she had the truth in front of her when she was ready to face it. Back to Kai. I knew his desperation was growing. I could feel it in every interaction, every strained conversation. His once charming demeanor was slipping, replaced by frustration, even anger. It was all falling apart, and I was only tightening the noose. I had one final move before the grand reveal, the final nail in his coffin. I contacted my lawyer, had them draw up the legal documents to freeze Cabe's access to all the properties he'd been involved with. I was going to make sure he couldn't walk away from this, at least not with anything to show for it. I sat back in my chair, staring at the papers in front of me. This was it. The final act was drawing near. I could almost taste the victory, but there was something else lingering beneath the surface. What would this cost me? What would this do to my daughter? She didn't deserve any of this. But I couldn't turn back now. I had to protect what was mine. The storm was coming, and Kai had no idea how fast the tide was turning against him. It wouldn't be long now. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I was playing my hand, piece by piece, and it was all coming together. Key's carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down, and when it did, he would have no one but himself to blame. The days that followed were a blur of planning, paperwork, and one meticulous move after another. Every decision, every action was calculated. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. Kay had been playing me for months, maybe longer, and now it was time to turn the tables. The evidence was undeniable. Bank transfers, fake contracts, shady deals, all leading back to him. But I couldn't just show Emily a stack of papers and expect her to believe me. No, this had to be done with precision. I needed to expose Kai in a way that would destroy his credibility, his reputation, and everything he thought he was entitled to. I started by freezing access to his business accounts. Kai had no idea that I'd been watching him so closely, that I'd been digging into his finances and tracking every suspicious transaction. But now, every dollar he thought he was moving into his own pockets was frozen. The accounts were locked, the flow of money cut off. It was a small victory, but it was enough to send him into a frenzy. I could feel the pressure building. Every time I checked my phone, there was another frantic call or text from him, asking about the accounts, trying to smooth things over, playing the role of the worried, innocent man. But I wasn't buying it. He had no idea I was playing him. And the best part, he had no idea what was coming next. I called Ryan again. We need to make sure Kai feels like Hesep's getting away with it. We need to keep him on edge. Ryan didn't hesitate. Leave it to me, Jack. This will plant a few false leads, make him think Hesep's outsmarting us. It felt good. Watching Kai squirm, watching him make desperate moves to cover his tracks. It gave me a sense of satisfaction, but I couldn't let it go too far. Not yet. My plan needed time to unfold, and patience was key. I decided to turn the tables further. I planted a few subtle false clues around his office, and in the property he'd been managing. Nothing too obvious, but just enough to make him second-guess himself. Maybe a misplaced document here, a phone number he didn't recognize there. Just enough to make him paranoid, to make him feel like someone was always watching him. The more I set up these small traps, the more I saw Kai begin to unravel. He started to act different. The confident, charming facade was slipping. I watched as he tried to cover his tracks, digging deeper and deeper into his own lies. It was only a matter of time before he cracked. I could feel it, the tension was building, and I was just getting started. Meanwhile, I kept feeding Emily small, carefully timed pieces of information. I didn't want to overwhelm her, but I needed her to start seeing the cracks in Kier's story. She was smart, and I knew she'd start noticing the inconsistencies. Slowly, I began to build a case against him in her mind, one conversation at a time. Have you noticed anything strange with Kai lately? I asked casually one evening. Anything off? She hesitated. Well, now that you mention it, Sep's been more distant lately, and Sep's always talking about the business. Like Sep's the one running it, not you. I leaned in, my tone serious. You need to be careful, Em. I don't want to scare you, but Sep's been doing more than just that. Sep's seen the signs. Sep's been hiding things from you. Emily looked at me, confusion and worry in her eyes. What are you saying, Dad? Sep's saying Sep's been taking money from the business. I have proof. Sep's show you everything, but you have to trust me. Her eyes widened, but she didn't say anything. She just nodded slowly, taking it all in. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I couldn't force her to believe me, but I could make sure she had the truth in front of her when she was ready to face it. Back to Key. I knew his desperation was growing. I could feel it in every interaction, every strained conversation. His once charming demeanor was slipping, replaced by frustration, even anger. It was all falling apart, and I was only tightening the noose. I had one final move before the grand reveal, the final nail in his coffin. I contacted my lawyer, had them draw up the legal documents to freeze Kai's access to all the properties he'd been involved with. I was going to make sure he couldn't walk away from this, at least not with anything to show for it. I sat back in my chair, staring at the papers in front of me. This was it. The final act was drawing near. I could almost taste the victory, but there was something else lingering beneath the surface. Guilt. What would this cost me? What would this do to my daughter? She didn't deserve any of this. But I couldn't turn back now. I had to protect what was mine. The storm was coming, and Kai had no idea how fast the tide was turning against him. It wouldn't be long now. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I was playing my hand piece by piece, and it was all coming together. Key's carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down, and when it did, he would have no one but himself to blame. Kanye was unraveling. I could see it in his eyes, in the way he moved, the way his confident smile started to crack under pressure. Every time I spoke to him, he was more defensive, more frantic. But I wasn't going to let up. Not now. Not after everything he'd done. I had all the proof I needed. The bank transfers, the fake receipts, the shady companies, and now it was time to escalate. He thought he could outsmart me, but I had one more trick up my sleeve. I called Ryan again. It's time, we need to push him to the edge. Ryan was quick to respond, his voice cold and calculating. You got it. We still make him think he Seps won, but we still have him cornered. He won, I Seps didn't know what hit him. The tension was mounting, and I could feel the pressure in every conversation, every action I took. My hands shook as I sat down to review the legal documents. The lawyer was ready to go. Key's business accounts were frozen, and I had the evidence to take him to court. But I wasn't just going for the money. No, I wanted everything he'd worked for to be destroyed. His reputation, his pride, his place in this family. I wasn't just exposing him to Emily anymore. I was setting the stage for the ultimate humiliation, and I was going to do it with the precision of a man who had been wronged and was now taking back control of his life. I took the next step. I forged documents, ones that would make it seem like Kai had been caught in a much deeper mess than just a few stolen dollars. I knew he'd be desperate by now, but I needed to make sure he didn't suspect a thing. I left a trail of false documents designed to make him think the walls were closing in. The more I planted, the more I watched him scramble to cover his tracks. I even sent a few fake emails from a law firm I'd set up telling him that legal action was being taken against him, that his actions had been uncovered, and that the authorities were involved. The beauty of it was that he didn't even know it was me. He thought he was losing, thought he was going to be exposed. The tension in his voice when he called me was something I'd never forget. He was rattled. His confidence was gone, replaced with fear, and I could almost taste the desperation in his words. Jack, Kai said, his voice tight with anxiety. What SEP's going on? I SEP am getting calls from lawyers, people telling me I SEP am in trouble. What have you done? I acted calm, composed. Cunny, I don't know what you civil talking about. I haven't done anything, but if you civil feeling the heat, maybe it's steps because you civil been hiding something. I guess I still just have to look into it further. I could hear the panic in his breath. No, no, Jack. Please listen to me. It sets not like that. You set been misunderstanding everything. I set been stressed. I set been just key. I think you said are the one misunderstanding, I said, my tone colder than I said it intended. You said have been stealing from me, from my family, and now you said are going to pay for it. I hung up before he could respond. I didn't need to hear his lies anymore. I had all the proof I needed. He was cornered, and there was nothing he could do to escape. It felt good, satisfying, even. But still, there was a part of me that wondered how far this would go. How much would Emily be hurt by the truth? How much of her life would she lose when she found out what Kai had really been doing? The plan was simple. I'd wait for the right moment. Everything was set up, his financial misdeeds, the legal documents, the fake leads, and now the emails that would make him think the whole world was crashing down around him. I was going to expose him in front of Emily, in front of everyone. But first, I needed to be sure. I had to make sure that when the time came, there was no turning back for Ka. I wanted him to know that the moment he decided to betray me, he sealed his own fate. He had no idea how much I'd been watching, no idea how deep the trap was. Then came the email I'd been waiting for, an anonymous tip-off about a mysterious meeting between Kai and a known criminal associate, someone with ties to the underworld. It was the perfect piece of evidence to finally push everything into the open. The final straw that would shatter everything he thought he had. I forwarded the email to Ryan. Make sure this goes to the right people. I want this out there. It sets time. Ryan didn't hesitate. It sets done. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. Kimmy had no idea what was coming. He thought he could hide behind his lies, but I was going to pull back the curtain and show the world who he really was. A liar, a thief, a manipulator, and when it was all over, when everything came crashing down, I was going to be the one standing tall. And Kai? He was going to be the one who lost everything. Everything he had ever tried to steal from me. I could feel it in the air. The tension, thick as smoke, swirling around me. Every conversation with Kai, every encounter, felt like it was leading to something much bigger, something inevitable. He was getting more paranoid by the day. I could see it in his eyes. He knew something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what, and that was exactly how I wanted it. I had him on the ropes now, and I was going to make sure he stayed there. I couldn't afford to make a mistake now. Every move had to be calculated. Every word, every gesture had to be perfectly timed to keep him on edge without tipping him off to what I was really doing. I could see the cracks in his carefully constructed facade. Key had always been the charming, confident son-in-law. He played the part so well, always smiling, always reassuring Emily, always convincing everyone that he was the perfect man. But now? Now every word he spoke felt forced. Every glance he shot my way carried a trace of guilt, a trace of fear. He couldn't hide it anymore. I watched him closely, observing every move, every subtle change in his behavior. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by nervous gestures and constant checking of his phone. I knew he was feeling the heat. I knew he was starting to crack under the pressure. I'd been feeding Emily small pieces of information about Kai, trying to make her see the truth without overwhelming her. But now I had to take it a step further. I had to push her to confront the reality of what Kai had been doing. One evening, as we sat at dinner, I turned the conversation toward him. Have you noticed how on edge Kai has been lately? I asked, keeping my voice casual, almost like it was just a passing thought. She looked up, her brow furrowed. What do you mean? He's just been stressed with work. You know how he gets. I nodded, pretending to consider her words. I get that, but it sips more than that, Em. Is sips like he sips hiding something. Have you seen the way he sips been acting? How he sips always checking his phone, always looking over his shoulder. Emily shifted in her seat, her fork hovering in midair. No, I didn't think about it like that. But now that you mention it, he sips been acting kind of distant. Maybe you sip Shrey right. Something doesn't sip feel right. I didn't push her too hard. The seeds of doubt had already been planted. I knew she was starting to see Kai for what he really was, and that was all I needed. The more she noticed, the more she would start to question him. And when the truth finally came out, it would hit her like a freight train. But I couldn't wait for Emily to figure it out on her own. I had to make sure Kai knew he was trapped. So I stepped up my game. I had Ryan continue to plant false clues, small, subtle things that would make Kai think he was being watched. A phone call here, a strange email there. I knew he was paranoid, but I needed to push him further to make him sweat. I wanted him to feel like he was losing control of everything. One night, I caught him slipping. I had set up a meeting with one of my contacts in the business world, someone who had a personal vendetta against Kai. I knew it would be just the thing to rattle him. I made sure Kai overheard part of the conversation, just enough to make him think I was going behind his back. I saw it the moment he realized what was happening. His face went pale, his body went rigid, but he didn't say anything. He didn't confront me. Instead, he acted like nothing was wrong, like everything was fine. But I could see the cracks. He was unraveling. The tension between us was palpable. Every word out of his mouth felt like a lie. Every gesture seemed rehearsed. And Emily, she was caught in the middle, torn between her loyalty to her husband and the growing suspicion in her gut. I knew it was only a matter of time before she saw the truth for herself. I could feel the pressure building. Every day, every move I made, the walls closed in on Kie, and I could see the desperation creeping into his actions. He was trying to cover his tracks, to make himself seem innocent, but the harder he tried, the more obvious it became. His lies were starting to crumble under the weight of the truth. And all the while, I was watching. I was waiting. I knew the moment would come when everything would finally come to a head. But for now, I needed to keep up the pressure. I needed to make sure he stayed off balance, kept second-guessing himself, wondering when the other shoe would drop. Every move I made, every conversation I had, was a step closer to the final confrontation, and when that moment came, Kai wouldn't have anywhere to hide. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you're listening from. The storm was coming. Kai had no idea how close he was to losing everything, but I was ready, and I was going to make sure he paid for every lie, every betrayal. Thanksgiving dinner was meant to be a peaceful gathering, a time to reflect on the things we were grateful for. But as I stood in the kitchen preparing the meal, I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. The air felt heavy, thick with tension. Emily, Can, and the rest of the family were coming over, but I knew that what was about to unfold would change everything. Key had no idea what was coming. He was oblivious, his usual charm and smile still firmly in place as he entered the house, greeting everyone like nothing was wrong. But I could see the cracks. His nervous glances, the way he kept checking his phone, the way his hands trembled ever so slightly when he reached for the wine. He was on edge, and he had every reason to be. I kept my distance, pretending like everything was normal. But the truth was, I was setting the stage for the final confrontation. The truth would be exposed, and there was no turning back now. I had everything in place. The footage, the bank transfers, the forged emails, the fake documents. I had built this moment up for weeks, laying the groundwork. Kai thought he was getting away with it, but tonight he would find out just how wrong he was. The dinner was going as expected, small talk, the clinking of glasses, everyone pretending like everything was fine. But I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. The calm before the storm. When the time came, I stood up. The room fell silent. "Everyone, I need you to listen," I said, my voice steady but laced with the weight of what was about to happen. Key looked up, his face paling as he realized something was off. His eyes darted around the room, and for the first time in a long time I saw fear in his gaze. I've been meaning to tell you all something, I continued, my voice unwavering, something you all deserve to know. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folder. The room was silent, everyone's eyes on me. Key was frozen, his mouth slightly open, but no words came out. I know what's been going on. I know about the money you've been siphoning from my business, the fake invoices, the shady companies. I know about your lies, your manipulation, and I have the proof right here. I slammed the folder onto the table, and the sound seemed to echo through the room. Kyle's face was now a mix of anger and panic, but he didn't move, he couldn't. I pulled out the first piece of evidence, the bank transfers. This, I said, holding up the document, shows the money you have been funneling into your personal accounts. Over $50,000, and that sets just the start. The silence in the room was suffocating. Everyone was staring at Kaine now, waiting for him to deny it, to make some excuse. But he didn't. He just stared at the table, his hands clenched into fists, knuckles white. I wasn't done. I grabbed the next piece of evidence, an email, one of the forged ones I'd sent him, making him believe the authorities were after him. You thought you could get away with this, I said, showing the email to the room. You thought you could destroy me, ruin my business, and get away with it, but you were wrong. You're finished. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He tried to speak, but it was too late. The truth was out, and the look on his face, the shock, the realization that he was caught, was more satisfying than I ever could have imagined. Jack, please, he said, his voice desperate, pleading. You don't understand. It's not what you think. I understand perfectly, I interrupted, my voice cold. You been using me, lying to me, trying to steal everything I had built. You been poisoning this family, and now is over. I turned to Emily, who was standing by the door, her face pale as she took in the scene. Her eyes were wide, filled with confusion, pain, and disbelief. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to hurt you, but Key's been hiding the truth from you. He's been playing you just like he played me. He's been playing you just like he played me. Key finally stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. He looked at Emily, then back at me, his face a mixture of anger and humiliation. You think this is over, Jack? You think you can ruin me, destroy everything I since worked for? You don't know what I sense capable of. I didn't flinch. Oh, I know exactly what you're capable of, and it ends tonight. There was a long silence as the weight of the moment hung in the air. Key was sweating now, his hands shaking as he looked around the room, hoping for some ally, some way out. But there was no escape. The truth was too strong, the evidence too damning. Emily, I said softly, turning to her, I didn't want this for you, but now you know the truth. You need to decide where your loyalty lies. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Kai, her heart breaking. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to defend him. But the truth was right there in front of her, undeniable. Key stepped back, his face reddening with rage. You will regret this, Jack. You and your pathetic business. I'll destroy you. But it was too late. The damage was done. He was exposed. And in that moment I realized just how much I had sacrificed to get here. Everything I'd worked for, my business, my reputation, my family, was on the line. But I had won. Justice was on my side. Kay's voice trembled with rage as he stormed out of the room, leaving behind the remnants of his carefully crafted lie. The family was silent. The tension that had been building for weeks finally came to a head. Emily stood there, staring at the door where Kai had just left, her face filled with confusion and sorrow. I could see the pain in her eyes as she processed the truth. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I had exposed Kai for the fraud he was, but the fallout was just beginning. Emily had a choice to make, and I didn't know how things would unfold from here. But I knew one thing for sure, my revenge was complete, and Kai would never hurt me or anyone else again. The silence after Kai left was deafening. The room felt cold, the air thick with disbelief. Emily stood frozen, staring at the door where her husband had just stormed out, leaving everything he'd built on lies crumbling around him. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the pain of betrayal, but also something else. She was beginning to understand. Slowly, the reality of what Kai had done was sinking in. She turned to me, her voice shaking. Dad, what just happened? I, I don't just understand. I took a deep breath, my chest tight. I had done what needed to be done, but now the aftermath was hitting me harder than I expected. I had exposed the truth, and in doing so I had ripped apart my family. But it was the only way. Key had been manipulating her, controlling everything from the shadows. She had to see the truth. I said softly, my voice steady but filled with regret. I didn't want to do this, but I couldn't let him get away with what he was doing. He was stealing from me, from all of us, and he was lying to you. Her face crumpled, the realization hitting her like a tidal wave. She stumbled backward, clutching the back of a chair for support. I, I never knew. I never saw it. How could I not see it? I stepped forward, reaching out to her. I know him. He was good at hiding it, but now you know the truth. I said sorry I had to drag you into this. Her eyes filled with tears, and she wiped them away quickly, as if trying to hold it together. I just, I just, I don't know what to do. Kai was everything to me. He was my husband. And now I see who he really is. How could I have been so blind? I didn't have the answers. I wished I could tell her it would all be okay, that this would all blow over, but I knew it wouldn't. The damage was done. You don't have to go through this alone, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Except I'm here for you, Em. We shall figure this out together. She nodded slowly, her face still a mix of hurt and confusion, but I could see the spark of clarity starting to take hold. The more she processed the truth, the stronger she became. I turned away, looking out the window at the city lights stretching out below. The business, my life's work, was safe. The exposure of Key's lies had saved everything I had built, but the personal cost was steep. My relationship with Emily would never be the same. I had lost my son-in-law, yes, but more than that, I had damaged the bond I shared with my daughter, and that hurt more than anything else. The phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Ryan. Jack, his voice was grave. It's Sep's over. Kai Sep's been trying to cover his tracks, but the legal papers are already in motion. The fraud charges are being filed, and the bank is freezing his accounts. The lawyer Sep's already preparing for the court case. I closed my eyes, letting out a breath. It was done. Kai was finished. Good. Make sure everything is airtight. I don't want him getting away with this. Don't worry, Jack. It's Sep's all in place. He's Sep's going to face the consequences for everything he's Sep's done. I hung up, feeling a strange mixture of relief and sadness. The victory felt hollow. Sure, Kai would lose everything. The business, his reputation, his chance at my wealth. But I had lost something too. My family wasn't the same anymore. Emily was still my daughter, but the trust we had shared was shattered, and no matter how much I tried to fix it, that gap between us would never fully close. I went to find her, to check on her, but she was gone. She had gone to her room, and the door was closed. I knew she needed space, time to process it all, but I wasn't sure if there was anything I could do to make it right. The next few days were a blur. Emily barely spoke to me. Lost in her thoughts, wrestling with the betrayal of her husband and the truth of his actions. She was angry, confused, hurt, and so was I, but we were both trying to heal, in our own ways. It wasn't easy. Nothing about this was easy. But life moved forward. The legal battle was far from over. Key was facing charges for the fraud he'd committed, and the fallout was beginning to spread. The business was recovering, though it would take time to rebuild the trust that had been fractured. The family, too, was shattered, but there was hope. I had to believe that, despite the cost, we could find a way to rebuild what had been broken. And then there was Kais. He thought he could take everything from me. He thought he could destroy my empire, my reputation, my family. But he hadn't reckoned with the one thing that mattered most, my determination to protect what was mine. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you're listening from. I had won the battle, but the scars would remain. The price of revenge, of justice, was high. but in the end I had taken back control. And Key, well, he had nothing left but his own lies. It's strange how the word justice can feel so different when you're the one on the receiving end of it. When it's not just about right and wrong, but about reclaiming what's yours, what was stolen from you. And as the legal battle against Key unfolded, I realized just how far I'd come. The path to this point had been anything but easy, but I was finally seeing the fruits of my hard work, my patience, and my resolve. Kay's world had come crashing down. The court filings, the bank freezes, the fake documents he thought he'd so carefully planted, they were all being exposed one by one. He'd tried to cover his tracks, tried to manipulate the situation, but the evidence was undeniable. There was no way out for him. I watched the headlines. The court reports, the public outcry as Kai's fraud became a topic of discussion in business circles. He had lost everything. His name, his wealth, and soon his freedom. The truth was out. And now the consequences were coming for him faster than he could ever have imagined. But there was something missing. The satisfaction I had thought I'd feel when Kai finally paid for what he did wasn't there. I'd watched him crumble under the pressure, his life falling apart. I'd exposed his lies, his greed, and his betrayal, but it felt like I was missing something. I went back to my office, a place I hadn't been to in days. I hadn't been able to sit there, my sanctuary, since all of this started. The place where I'd built my business from nothing. The place where I'd made decisions, created plans, and worked toward a future I'd finally been ready to embrace. Now that future was uncertain. The damage to my family, to my relationship with Emily, was permanent. I sat down at my desk and looked around the room. It was quiet, empty. Everything felt different now. The pictures on the wall, the awards, the documents stacked neatly in the corner, it all seemed so meaningless. I had fought to preserve my empire, but I was starting to realize what truly mattered. My business? That was important, sure. But my family, my relationship with Emily, those were the things I'd taken for granted. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was my lawyer. Jack, he said, his voice calm but firm. The court has ruled in your favor. Key Sip's assets have been seized, and the charges for fraud have been upheld. He Sips'll be facing time in prison. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the words sink in. Justice had been served, but it felt hollow. That Sips it then, I said quietly. He Sip's done. Yes, the lawyer replied, but there's still the matter of the restitution. You settle be compensated for the losses. I nodded, but I didn't feel the sense of victory I thought I would. The restitution, the money, the business, none of it mattered in that moment. What mattered was the cost of what had been lost. I thought of Emily. How was she holding up? She hadn't spoken to me much since the dinner. She had pulled away, processing everything in her own way. I understood. She had lost so much, her husband, her trust in me, her sense of security. But what I hadn't expected was the distance that had grown between us. The gap that Kai had created was far greater than I ever anticipated. I decided to reach out to her. I needed to speak to her. "Team," I said, when she answered the phone. "We need to talk." There was silence on the other end. "Dad, I don't know what to say." I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. "I know, but I want to make sure you stay okay. I need you to know that I never wanted any of this. I never wanted you to be caught in the middle." "I know, Dad," she said, her voice soft but filled with pain. "But I can just forget what happened. You exposed Kai, but it feels like you exposed everything. Our family, our life. I don't know how to fix it." I felt a lump in my throat, the weight of the situation bearing down on me. "I know, I didn't mean to hurt you, Em, but I couldn't let Kay do this to us. To me, I thought if I did what was right, everything else would fall into place. But now, I see I was wrong." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "I need time, Dad. Time to process everything. Time to figure out what's left of us." "I understand," I whispered. "Just know I am here whenever you are ready." We said our goodbyes, and I hung up, the quiet in my office feeling even heavier than before. The world was moving on. Key was facing the consequences of his actions, But my world, my family, was broken, and there was no easy fix. I had won. The justice I had sought was finally mine, but the cost of that victory had been more than I ever imagined. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I had always believed that justice was simple, that it was a clear, straightforward thing. But now I saw the truth. It was messy. It was painful. And sometimes it came at a price that wasn't worth paying. The days have passed in a blur, each one blurring into the next. Kai is gone. My business is safe. The legal battle has been won. But the victory feels empty. What does it all mean when the cost is my family? My relationship with my daughter, my peace of mind. I sit in my office now, surrounded by the remnants of what used to be my world. The desk where I made decisions, where I built everything from the ground up, is now just a silent witness to the wreckage of my life. My empire is intact, but I've realized something much more painful: the price of that victory. I spent years building this business. I sacrificed everything to make sure it thrived. My work, my late nights, my sleepless hours, all of it was for this moment, this success. But as I sit here now, I wonder if it was worth it. Was it worth losing my daughter? Was it worth tearing apart the only family I had left? I never thought it would come to this. When I started this journey, I thought I could protect everything I held dear: my business, my reputation, my family. But when Kai walked into our lives, I never imagined the destruction he would bring, the way he wormed his way into our hearts, into my trust, only to betray it all for money, for power. He thought he could take everything from me. He thought he could destroy my business, ruin my reputation, and claim everything I had built for himself. But he didn't understand one thing. I was willing to fight for everything I loved, and that's what saved me. But what did it cost me? Emily, my daughter, the one person who should have been by my side, the one person I wanted to protect above all else. She's distant now. The bond we shared is fractured, and no amount of money or success can fix that. I see her, and I feel a hole in my chest, an emptiness I can't fill. She's angry. She's hurt, and I understand why. She lost her husband, the man she trusted, the man she thought would be there for her. But I lost her too. I lost the connection we had, the closeness we once shared. I thought I was doing what was right. I thought I was saving her, protecting her from Key's lies. But in the process, I've pushed her further away. She needs time, I know that, but the weight is unbearable. I think back to the day I first started this business, the day I took that first leap of faith. I was just a man with a dream, a man who wanted to prove something to the world and to myself. I was driven, focused, obsessed. I didn't have time for distractions, for relationships. The work became everything. But now I see the cost of that obsession. I lost my family along the way. I tried to protect Emily from the truth, from the man she loved, but in doing so I've lost her trust, and now she's left to pick up the pieces. I wonder if it was all worth it. The money, the power, the success, all of it seems so hollow now. What good is it if I can't share it with the people I care about? The more I think about it, the more I realize revenge, justice, they're not as simple as I thought. They don't come with a neat bow or a sense of satisfaction. They come with a cost, a heavy cost, one I wasn't prepared for. Maybe I should have walked away. Maybe I should have let go of the business and focused on my family, on rebuilding the relationship I had with Emily before it was too late. But now all I have is the emptiness, the loss, and the regret. I hope that one day Emily and I can rebuild what was broken. I hope she can forgive me for everything that happened, but I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if I can ever repair the damage I've done, but I do know one thing. I fought for what was mine. I protected my legacy, and I made sure that Kai would never destroy everything I had built. Maybe that's all I can do now. Maybe that's all any of us can do. I look out of my office window, watching the city lights flicker below. I built this, and I fought for it. But in the end, what I've learned is that the real fight is not against the people who try to take from you, it's about the people you love. And the cost of losing them is more than any business, any success could ever be worth. You didn't lose me, I whisper to myself. My reflection in the glass, You gave me away. And in that moment, I finally understand. I sit here now at the end of this long road, and I can't help but reflect on everything that's happened. The twists, the turns, the betrayal, the revenge. I did what I thought was right. I fought for what was mine, what I had worked for, what Kai tried to take. But in the end, I'm left with more questions than answers. Key is gone. His reputation is in ruins. His name forever tarnished by the lies he wove. The business is mine, intact, safe. But I wonder if it was worth it. Was it worth the toll it took on my family, on Emily? I think about the man I used to be, the driven, focused entrepreneur who didn't let anything get in his way. I was so consumed by the need for success that I didn't notice the cracks forming in the one thing that mattered most. My relationship with my daughter. In the end, it wasn't the business that mattered. It was the family I was willing to protect, even if it cost me everything. Now, I don't know where Emily and I stand. The damage has been done, and I'm not sure how long it will take for the wounds to heal. But I have to believe that there's hope, that we can rebuild what was broken, even if it takes time. Because no matter how much I've lost, I still have something worth fighting for her. I think back to the moments before everything fell apart. When I was just a man with a dream, I wanted to build something to leave behind, something that mattered. But what I've learned is this: success, legacy. It's nothing without the people you love. And in the end, I've learned that revenge, no matter how justified, comes with a price I wasn't prepared to pay. But maybe that's the true lesson here, that justice, while sweet, can never replace what you lose along the way. Maybe one day Emily and I will find our way back to each other. Maybe the scars will fade and we can rebuild. But for now, all I can do is live with the choices I made, the consequences of the actions I took. I won the battle. But the war? That's a different story. And as for Kai, well, the lesson was clear. You can take everything from someone, but you can't take their soul. Not unless they let you. You didn't lose me. I whisper again, the weight of everything sinking in. You gave me away. And I wonder, in the silence of my office, if that's the truest thing I've ever said.